All right, thank you. All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to begin here shortly. Reminder, please ensure your cell phones are off or on silent, and council members, ensure your microphones are turned on. All right, today is Monday, March 18th, 2024. Today is a committee of the whole meeting for Barberton City Council. Before we begin the committee of the whole meeting, though, we do have individual committee meetings this evening. And we will start with street, sidewalk, and lighting with Mrs. Beck.
Thank you, Mr. President. At this time, I'd like to bring the Streets, Lighting, and Sidewalk Committee to order. It is Monday, March 18th, 2024. The time is 6:02 p.m. All members of my committee are present, including myself as chair, Monty Harris, Kenny Cheatham, and Justin Greer. All others noted on my sheet. Today we have one request for legislation. A request for legislation from Mike Tiadecki, city engineer, requesting legislation to permit the mayor to apply to Ohio Department of Transportation, ODOT, for Safe Route to School, STRS, infrastructure project funding. Emergency wording requested. Please see request for details. Does everybody have that piece of legislation in front of them? At this time, I'd like to open it up for remarks to the committee. Any remarks from the rest of the council? Okie dokie. I ask, is there, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make that motion.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that motion.
All members voting to call this piece of, all members voting to call this piece of legislation out of committee signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. And then we don't have any pending legislation and any miscellaneous discussion. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Any second?
Second.
And we are adjourned at 6:04 p.m.
Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mrs. Hager.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental and Health and Social Services Committee meets March 18th, 2024 in council chambers. The time is 6:06 p.m. All members of my committee are present with myself as chair, Mr. Griffin, Mrs. Thompson, and Mr. Greer. All other council members are present, as well as guests listed on my sheet. We have no new requested for legislation, and we have no pending legislation at this time. Is there any miscellaneous discussion from my committee or council?
Chair,
Yes.
have you heard any updates from the mosquito abatement district?
No, not yet.
Okay.
I did talk to him today, and within the next week or two, I'm gonna actually have a meeting and sit down with him and get some more information so we can start passing out and let everybody know when that'll start.
All right.
Anything from the gallery? All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
And we are adjourned at 6:07 p.m.
Thank you, Mrs. Hager. Next up is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes. It is Monday, March 18th, 2024, 6:07 p.m. in council chambers. The committee is present, which consists of Councilors Thompson, Harris, President Greer, and myself as chair. All others noted. Tonight, we have nothing. Is there any miscellaneous discussion from the council? from the gallery? Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. We are adjourned at 6:08.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. Last but not least, Finance and Personnel, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to bring the Finance and Personnel Committee to order. It is Monday, March 18th, 2024, 6:08 PM here in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, which includes myself as chair, Mr. Heidick, Mr. Griffin, and President Greer. All other council members are also present, and as well as guests as noted on my agenda sheet. We have a few requests for legislation. The first being a letter from Jeremy Flaker, Finance Director, requesting legislation to enter into a 3-year contract with OpenGov for a cloud-based budgeting and planning software. Emergency wording and 1 reading is requested. Are there any questions regarding this request? Mr. Flaker, do you have anything for this, or?
If you guys
If
have
you-
any questions, I can help, I can answer them, or if you want me to go in more depth of the program, I can. What do you guys?
Chair.
Oh, yep.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to have a question. So
All right.
I did have a question. I forgot it. But this is a cloud-based solution for online. Is this going to be publicly accessible? Like, is there a version that's publicly accessible
Yes.
24/7,
Yeah, so
or is it updated?
If anyone wants to see what it would look like, a perfect example would be the city of North Canton. They have they're with the same exact company. Another example would be city of Huron and city of Xenia, off the top of my head. But city of North Canton is close to home, so perfect example. They call it a transparency portal. So basically, a copy of the budget would go into this like transparency portal, and any person, citizen, outsider, whatever, can go into this website and drill down deeper if they want to look at a specific budget. So if they want to go into general fund, they can click general fund, and then and I have total control of how deep a person could go into it. So from the general fund, if they wanted to go to police department, they could go to the police department. If they wanted to see police department's personnel and personnel services, they could go into that. And if I wanted to go line item, maybe a little bit too in-depth there, but if they wanted to go line item, I could have it go into line item detail even, if I wanted it to.
A follow-up question with that, is this, you mentioned the transparency portal, is this live updated with money spent out of that account? Or is it just what the approved budget would be throughout the year?
So we can put actuals out there. Will it be live? No. Because unfortunately, the solution that would be the most live or integrated just wasn't a good solution for the city. A lot of the problems that I was coming into with trying to figure out a solution for the city is the minimum fund balance policy that the city has. A lot of companies can't deal with it. They don't have a solution for it, unfortunately. Only 2 companies out of the 4 I talked to did have solutions. Unfortunately, the one our software vendor that for our accounting system uses, they have no solution to it whatsoever. So kind of ruled them out. So with this company though, I can export data or import it into that system however, whenever I feel like it. Since basically most of our transactions happen every Friday, either via payroll or accounts payable, we'll probably update it probably every Friday. It would be the goal, is try to update it every single week with live data. So would it be up-to-date data? No. But will it be very close to being live? Yes. So.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Director. Thank you, Chair.
Are there any other questions from council, the gallery? Okay. Hearing none, can I have a motion to call, please? Thank you. And a second?
I'll second that.
Alrighty, those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next up, we have a letter from Stephen Iono, Chief of Barberton Fire Department, requesting legislation to appropriate $408.83 from Gov Deals back to the fire department operating budget. Are there any remarks regarding this? Can I have a motion to call, please?
I'll make that motion.
Thank you. And a second?
Second.
Those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, and we have one pending item, which would be ordinance number 14-2024, the 2024 operating and capital budget. I'm gonna need a minute because my book's in my car. If we can just take a quick break. I apologize. Oh, thank you. Okay, sorry guys. Okay, we'll go ahead and get into it then.
We have two funds to review today. The rental registration, 242, I'll get you a page number here, and the vacant property registration. Rental registration is on page 121. So this is a program that we've been using for 12 plus years. It's changed a little bit over the years, but you see the revenue from rental registrations and inspections, estimated to be $220,000. Bumped that up a little bit from last year, since there was last year's budget, since there was an increase in actual revenue. And then you have the miscellaneous, which hasn't changed all that much. Under expenditures, you've got salary of a few employees there. So the secretary, general salary, building inspector, electrical and housing inspector is 0, property maintenance inspectors, and then you've got their health care and roll-ups that are there. So that comes to $258,000 for all of that. Under operations and maintenance, about the same as last year's budget. And we didn't spend as much on the actual side. You know, this fund can't be used, it has to be used in regard to rentals, right? Or to improve the neighborhood. So, you know, over the years, some of the feedback that we've got, we've incorporated into this budget. So you'll see for the first time, we've got a residential home rehabilitation program. So that money can only be used on rental units. Same with the city rebate program and the paint rebate program. We have other programs, especially on the paint rebate side, for owner occupied. You can see an investment being made from the rental side, rental revenue for rental units in town. And then nothing on the capital side. Did purchase a vehicle last year. That's the $15,500. But we did transfer from the rental registration to project impact to demolition under project impact, which will go for the demolition of rental unit. So, yes.
Hi there. I was curious what an expenditure would be for this program.
You know, whether it's, you mean under the rebate programs or?
Yeah, the rental registration program expenditures.
Oh, I mean, that could be, well, you got, whether that's, you got postage and supplies there, could be, let me see, let's get a little ticker here. Software maintenance, help pay for the software, the iWorks that we have. Some of the data that we are able to extrapolate from there.
We did spend some money in previous years and may make some additional upgrades to the office. So we can, a little bit into here, since some of the employees are paid out of this fund because almost every employee in that department works with rentals in some capacity, right? Because they're not in one section of town, they're all over. So.
Yes, sir.
Can you explain you say the paint rebate, city rebate program, and the residential home rehabilitation program are all concerning rental stuff? So we provide money to the rental?
It's on a rebate basis. So yeah, if we can help get a rental up to where it needs to be code compliant, if we can help. This is,
For instance, for the paint rebate program, if you have a rental and you want to paint the exterior of your home, you go buy the paint, you take before and after photos, you submit those with your receipts and an application for rebate, and then we review the paint or the pictures, the receipt, application, and then provide up to, I believe
I think it's $10 a gallon, up to 10 gallons.
yeah.
We're looking at changing that because paint has gone up.
I was just wondering what the big increases were there when we only spent like $280 on the paint rebate, and we didn't
Well, and
spend.
so it's on an application basis. So I mean, if nobody applies for it, but we want to have the money available for landlords to be able to update and improve their rentals. I mean, we don't want to hold it back by limiting the amount of funds that are available. We would love for half of our rentals to come in and say, hey, we want to use that paint rebate program. So that's the reflection in the increase. Is just us hoping that we get a better turnout to improve and beautify some of the rentals.
Why not just go with 5,000? I mean, you're looking at quite a bit of money there.
I mean, if nobody applies for it, it doesn't get spent. It doesn't
Right.
go anywhere.
It stays in this fund, does not go back to the general fund, it stays in this fund.
So we could actually pay more for like another property inspector or whatever.
No, I mean, you're looking at 50 grand for an inspector plus.
Right, but I
50
mean,
grand
some of that
for-
money could go towards that, right? Can you explain the residential home rehabilitation program, since that appears to be new?
Yeah, so working with the finance director, we want to make sure that we can help landlords as they're trying to improve their properties. They're paying into this fund, so it's not taking out from general fund dollars, whether that's downspouts, gutters. We work with the building department to find out what the issues are. So, the paint rebate program, we've had debate on that, how many people are painting homes these days versus siding, right? But it can still be used for like windows and things like that. So we want to make sure, whether it's rental or owner occupied, that we have programs that are actually going to be utilized and the need is out there. Downspouts and gutters is a big one. Yes.
Would that be similar to like the paint where Todd talked about, like fill out an application and might get reimbursed for a repair on your home if it's a rental? Okay.
Yes.
The residential home rehabilitation one, you said owner occupied. Is that open to that too, or is this strictly
This is
rentals?
strictly rental.
Okay, I just heard you say owner occupied and got a little
Oh,
Yeah.
worried on
for
that one.
comparison, no. This is
Okay.
rental only.
Thank you.
I mean, the legislation also says that this can go for improvements to beautify or better the neighborhood, not beautify, but better the neighborhood. So it could go for other things if it betters the neighborhood at all, and that's what the legislation allows for.
Is that like for cleaning up somebody's property, or that would better the neighborhood? I mean, the looks of it?
Yeah, I mean, I think you could use some of this on the owner occupied, because it's bettering the neighborhood, but it's earmarked or geared for.
Who would
rentals.
make that decision on whether it would be?
I'd have to look through the legislation, I don't have it off the top of my head.
Rebecca.
Todd. If somebody wanted to know more about this, we could just tell them to call the building department
Yeah.
to see if they qualify. And then last question is just about the building department in general. with the building inspector, the housing inspector, the property maintenance inspector, zoning inspector, are those different people, or is that like one person can do that? Like, would just be an inspector and they'd cover all of that?
Some not.
So they could be similar people. If you're an electrical inspector, that's kind of a specified certification that you have,
Sure.
right? Building inspector is also specified with a different certification. Zoning inspector, and property maintenance inspectors, there's tests that they take to get certified. Those could be one and the same.
Okay.
So we do have different job classifications. There's a property maintenance inspector, and then there's like a tech.
Yeah, there's property maintenance tech, property maintenance inspector, building inspector, and then our CBO. And then we've got 2 clerks and a part-time clerk make up the whole building department.
Okay.
Who was the third one? I didn't.
Part-time clerk.
No, you said property, building.
Property maintenance inspector, property maintenance tech, so the tech is actually the next level. Building inspector, commercial building official, so our CBO, and then two clerks and a part-time clerk. That's the whole department.
Can you give me that legislation for that?
Mrs. Miller.
I just think what they're confused is there's a line item for a zoning inspector, there is a one, and that isn't in the union,
Yeah.
and it isn't there.
So, I mean, there's 0 salary marked for zoning
Right.
inspector.
We have 2 property maintenance inspectors or 1?
So there's 2 property maintenance inspectors and 2 property maintenance techs.
Property maintenance techs can do the job that a property maintenance inspector can do, and more.
2 of each, basically.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, the next one we'll do is on 257, vacant property registration.
Page 127.
So the city has a residential vacant registration program. They also have a commercial vacant registration program. So that runs out of this fund. So if I'm willed a house, right, and it's going through the process, it's not geared for that. But if I own 2 homes and I live in one and the other one's vacant, then you have to register that home. If a bank owns a house, they are to give a $10,000 cash bond. And then if there's an issue there, we can use that money right now to fix that problem. So let's say grass mowing. In a normal case, if there's grass that's cited by the city, it's cut by the city, then it's assessed to the taxes, then you go buy that house, you have to pay that assessment. That's not fair. So if it's bank owned, then we can just deduct that money right now, right? We've had that in place for a number of years. It's worked out pretty well, especially after the housing bust. We found a lot of out-of-state banks buying tax liens and owning a lot of property and not really doing anything with them. On the commercial side, there's legislation that based on square footage, if it's vacant, we want to have an inventory of that so we can help get businesses in there. And the higher the square footage, the higher the fee. I believe it starts out at $250, and it goes up from there. So this has been very helpful to not only find out what commercial buildings are vacant, but also to make sure that we can have an inventory of that and get businesses in the town that may meet that requirement of whatever the square footage is. So that's on the revenue side. On the expense side, you see building commissioners paid a little bit out of there, the administrative assistant, an inspector, and then all the roll-up line items that are there. And then a few expenses with office supplies and postage.
I noticed that the administrative assistant dropped dramatically.
Yeah, I don't.
I mean, so some of that is just the fund balance. We had to move the funds for personnel services because the program itself, as you can see in the revenue side, hadn't been a main focus. We're working on bringing it back because it's a necessary program to help, keep the buildings occupied and get more people in. So with that, we're going to build more revenue this year by focusing more on vacant properties, making sure that we're sending out the invoices, making sure that we're identifying these. So if we're doing rental registration and we find rentals that aren't registered and they happen to be vacant, now it's rental registration, vacant properties. Same goes for our commercial structures that are sitting without anybody occupying.
Okay.
So-
This is another fund that if the money's not spent, it stays in this fund.
Gotcha.
Yes.
For the vacant registration fee, I'm curious, for the commercial side, what could constitute not being vacant? For example, if you have a 3-story building in downtown and the upstairs is rented, but the ground floor is empty, theoretically, that building's not vacant, but how is that assessed? Is that charged? How does that work?
So there's a definition for that in the ordinance itself. I don't have it in front of me, but it does spell it out because I had the same question when we were rolling this back out and trying to, identify some of these properties. Because again, if somebody's using it as a dry storage, that maybe it's not being occupied by human occupancy, but they have a building and they've got materials in it. Is that a vacant building? And so I went to the ordinance, and again, it spelled it out in there. I don't know it off the wording off the top of my head.
It also may come down if the ground floor that's vacant is 100 Main Street A and upstairs is B. So 2 addresses, so maybe 2 different kind of apartments there, or not apartments, but commercial buildings. 1 building, 2, whatever. So they may get charged with on the vacancy.
Thank you.
And it's helped out. We've had, you get an inventory of buildings, you have people call looking for space, realtors or whoever, and you can give them the inventory sheet right now and it's worked out. Yes,
What is PERS, P-E-R-S?
Public Employee Retirement System.
Oh,
Put an O in front of it.
okay, okay.
All right, if there's nothing else, those are the 2 funds that I think we've gone through all of them, all the funds. If not, let me know. The vote is scheduled for next week, the 3rd reading. There's a lot that you guys have taken in over the last few weeks, especially on the utility and court side. So please continue to ask questions. Mr. Heidi did ask a question. I didn't get a chance to fully respond, and it was around 4:30 or so I don't know if anyone saw it. He asked about Inside Advisory Group and how much grant dollars have they brought in? Is that how you worded it? So they are one of our economic development consultants. They don't bring in grant dollars to the city, but they help us get grant dollars for businesses. So, for example, there's a company, family-owned company in town, purchased by a Belgian company that was looking at moving the entire company out of state. So through our business visits, we were able to learn what their needs were and what they were looking for. And Insight was able to get some training dollars from the state so they could hire additional employees. And they were able to get them some funding to keep them here in Barberton, which included new equipment. So having that knowledge of what's available at the state level and at the federal level helps out quite a bit. So grant dollars didn't come to us, they went straight to that company. So.
I didn't say if you were going to grab one on, I was going to look at the ordinance. Mr. Heidi.
I've got it downstairs.
While he's looking that up there, with the building department revenue or the rental registration revenue and all that, what if rentals are cited, or even with this vacancy, things are cited, where does that money end? Does that end back into the building department? Does that,
Any citation
for rentals, does that stay in the rental registration, or does that go
through
elsewhere?
the courts,
If we have to cite them for anything?
and it goes to the courts?
Mhm.
Is that a,
I'm sorry, I don't understand that question.
The
If a-
property maintenance
If a
or,
property is cited and it happens to be a rental, and it does go to court, does that money, where does that money go? Does that go into the rental program, or does that
If
go?
the property is cited
Mhm.
to court and they pay a fine and court costs, where does the fine money go?
Does it matter if it's a rental or not? Yes.
Well, fines are returned to the city, and so, okay, if it's cited under the codified ordinances, the fine would go to the city, and if the ordinance that is created for that code section indicates that that should go to a specific fund, then our finance director would put it in that specific fund. Correct?
Yes, but rental properties, if they are cited, it doesn't go into the rental registration fund. If there's fines paid through the courts.
it goes to the general fund?
So it goes there regardless if it's a rental or owner occupied. Okay, thank you.
Right, because I would tell you that, like, if it's cited through the International Property Maintenance Code, that's usually cited under like a failure to comply with an order of the building department. So a failure to comply is not, it would not designate whether it's an owner occupied structure or not.
That's why I was just trying to clear that they weren't separate when it came to that. Thank you.
So this is actually a four-part definition in our ordinance, so it's 1454.03 definition, so vacant. A structure that is not lawfully occupied or that otherwise qualifies as abandoned under this section. Multifamily residential structures shall be considered vacant when substantially all of the dwelling units are not lawfully occupied or that otherwise qualifies as abandoned under this section. Commercial structures shall be considered vacant when all commercial activity has ceased at the site or that otherwise qualifies as abandoned under this section. Multi-tenant commercial structures shall be considered vacant when substantially all of the units are not lawfully occupied or engaging in commercial activity or that otherwise qualifies as abandoned under this section. Industrial structures shall be considered abandoned when all industrial or manufacturing activity has ceased at the site or that otherwise qualifies as abandoned under this section. Multi-tenant industrial structures shall be considered vacant when substantially all of the units are not lawfully occupied or engaged in industrial or manufacturing activity that otherwise qualifies as abandoned under this section. That was bullet point 1. 2 is in determining whether a structure is vacant, it is also relevant to consider, among other factors, the percentage of the overall square footage of the building or floor not in use to be occupied space, the condition and value of any items in the structure, and the presence of rental or for sale signs on the property. 3 is a property that is temporarily unoccupied and is in the process of being renovated under proper and unexpired permits shall not be considered vacant. And 4, a property that is listed for sale with a licensed realtor under a fully executed listing agreement shall not be considered vacant for the first 6 months of the listing agreement under which the property was first listed for sale. Such property shall be considered vacant for purposes of this section upon the expiration of the first 6-month period for which it is first listed for sale or upon a subsequent relisting with the same or a different licensed realtor. Unoccupied property listed as for sale by owner shall be considered vacant for purpose of this section. Those are the 4 terms that determine whether it's vacant or not.
Can I have that ordinance number again, Todd?
1454.03, I believe it was what it was.
Sorry, I didn't mean for you to close that.
Yeah, 1454.03.
Thank you.
Yep.
I have a question about the rental registrations. Are we still honoring those who are grandfathered in with the cost of that this year?
I believe we are.
That are in good standing, of course?
Yeah.
Okay,
I believe as long as they stayed in good standing, they're still grandfathered in.
okay,
So, but if that changes hands, the ownership, then it reverts to,
right,
yeah.
okay.
So there's still a few out there. All right, thank you.
Can we check one more fund here?
What's up?
92, the animal control fund. It's got,
On page 92,
yeah, I just happened to be going through there and I saw that and I was like, okay.
Yeah,
I mean, we don't have animal control anymore. We, if we have to, we call Summit County and of course they charge us for that. I understand that. But why are we budgeting like $5,000 for contracts? What contracts are we? What contracts do we have that we pay for animal control?
so I have to make sure it's up to date. Maybe an annual thing, I'll have to check. We had an agreement with Summit County that if you were a Barberton resident and brought an animal up there, you could leave it there and then they would bill the city back.
So we're paying for someone to leave their animal there? Is that what you're saying?
Was Summit County Humane?
No, Summit County Animal Control.
Oh,
So someone takes feral cats up there, someone, we had an agreement a few years ago, I want to make sure that that's, off the top of my head, I don't recall if that was, there was like an annual agreement and then there was like several renewals and I'm not sure if we've passed that or not.
Can you give me that?
but
It was a way, so for example, there's a lot of complaints about, specifically feral cats.
Feral cats, yeah.
And that neighbors would have, what they would call outdoor pets or outdoor cats in particular, and not controlling them, and the neighbors don't care for that. And they might not even be their pets, it just might be other feral cats and so other neighbors don't care for that, and so they would be able to get cage is the only way I can describe it, and Summit County allows us, our residents, to take those cages, trap the cats, or any other kind of thing, and take it up to Summit County, and they'll take care of that for those residents. And that allows us to do that.
Okay.
Just want to say something about dogs and stuff. I have called them, and they have came out at night almost with big traps to catch dogs. Sometimes like it's a vicious dog.
This is Summit County?
Yeah, They
Okay.
came out to my house because I had a dog that wouldn't let me get in my car, and he wasn't my dog. You know what I mean? But anyway, they came out, put out a huge trap, and throw a can of dog food in there, and they catch it.
The feral cat thing has been an issue on and off for
For a long time.
forever.
Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Alright, I'll go ahead and open this up for miscellaneous discussion for finance and personnel. Yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just real quick, I don't want to reopen this back up, but I did look back. Councilwoman Fryer, at the time, was very adamant and passionate about the CAT program. This is from 2019, but I did talk to Mrs. Fry last year about the same program, and it still applied. Summit County Animal Control has an agreement with the city regarding residents and cats. Residents can spend $50 or give a $50 returnable deposit at Summit County and then trap the cats and then take them to 250 Opportunity Parkway in Akron during their business hours. And the price is $25 per cat, $12 per kitten. The resident then gets the deposit back for the cage, and then the invoice is sent to the mayor's office. So that's what that program was. And still is, from my understanding. Thank you, Chair.
Good to know. Thank you. Yep.
Thank you, Chair. I can't seem to find it on our website, but it is 107-2023 is the animal control agreement that we passed. I can't seem to,
Yeah.
it's pulling up every year but 2023 on this one. But that's when it was.
You said 7/7/23?
107-2023.
Okay. Is there any other miscellaneous for finance? From the gallery? Hearing none, can I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
And a second?
I will second that.
All right, we are adjourned at 6:43.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. Is there any objection to just powering through the next portion of the committee of the whole? No? All right. Then we're just going to move. All right. Well, that concludes our individual committee meetings, so we'll just hop right back in, or right into our committee of the whole. All right, today is Monday, March 18th, 2024. This is Committee of the Whole meeting for Barberton City Council. I call this meeting to order at 6:44 p.m. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, for citizens addressing council, I see Mrs. Phillips. Is there anything? I didn't check the paperwork. Just double checking, not to put you on the spot.
What about Mr. Best over here?
He's, yes.
Man of many words.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you.
I can talk about feral cats.
Yeah.
Out in the hall. People from North and
All right, well, with no citizens addressing council, we'll hop into our committee reports, and we'll start with street, sidewalk, and lighting with Mrs. Beck.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. Tonight we met in City Council chambers. We had one piece of legislation from Mike T. and Decky to enter in, to permit the mayor to apply to ODOT for STRS infrastructure project funding. Emergency wording was requested, and we passed that. And after that, we had nothing else that I passed.
Just for confirmation, that legislation was the Safe Routes to School grant, is that what you're
Yes,
talking about?
indeed. Mhm.
Okay,
STRTS.
thank you for the clarification. All right, thank you, Mrs. Beck. Environmental Health and Social Services, Mrs. Hager.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services has nothing to report for the past.
Thank you, Mrs. Hager. Planning, Annexation, and Codes, Mr. Heidick.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning, Annexation, and Codes has nothing to report. With that, I pass.
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. City Properties, Parks, and Recreation, Mr. Cheatham.
Thank you, Mr. President. The City Properties, Parks and Recreation Committee has one appointment. A letter from Tom Harden, President of Barberton Board of Education, requesting the appointment of Ms. Cindy Sutton for a 5-year term, beginning the date of her appointment and ending December 31st, 2028. That's all that I have at this time, and I also pass.
Thank you, Mr. Cheatham. Public Welfare and Safety, Mr. Harris.
Public Welfare and Safety met on March 11th. We had no request for legislation, no pending legislation, and we heard from Law Director Miller regarding her work with the Akron Bar Association and also the Attorney General Yost on police reform and training and funding, and she did quite a number. And with that, I have nothing else.
All right, thank you, Mr. Harris. Rules, Marketing, Development, Ms. Gearhart.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Rules, Marketing, and Development Committee has nothing to report this evening.
Thank you, Ms. Gearhart.
You're welcome.
City Utilities, Mr. Griffin.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met on March 11th. All members were present and guests as noted. We had one request for legislation, a letter from Dennis Weaver, Utilities Director, requesting legislation to authorize the mayor to enter into a contract with Hydro Stop LLC for the procurement of valve insertion equipment in the amount of $108,518.38. Emergency wording was requested. Motion was made to accept this request. We will be voting on this next week. We adjourn at 6:18. With that, I pass, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. Last but not least, Finance and Personnel, Mrs. Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. President. Finance and Personnel met this evening at 6:08 PM here in council chambers. All members of the committee were present, as well as all other council members and guests as noted. We are bringing forward two pieces of legislation. The first being a letter from Jeremy Flaker, Finance Director, requesting legislation to enter into a 3-year contract with OpenGov. Also, legislation to appropriate $408.83 from GovDeals back to the fire department operating budget. For pending legislation, we've got our 2024 operating and capital budget, which we also had discussion about this evening. For miscellaneous, we talked a little bit about animal control, and we adjourned at 6:43. With that, I pass.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson. That concludes our committee reports. Is there anything from the body that they'd like to share? Anything from department heads? I do not have nothing to report today, so we'll hop in Mayor's report.
Thank you, Mr. President. First, I want to thank everyone who attended my open office hours this past Saturday. Next open office hours will be Saturday, June 8th. I want to congratulate the Barberton VFW, Post 1066, on celebrating 92 years as a post. And I want to thank their leadership team for inviting me to come celebrate this past weekend. Packed house, good time. It's actually nice weather, so they planned it out right. So. The next Change for Change is this Friday, the 22nd, at the Civitan Club, benefiting Barberton Band Boosters. In terms of weather, obviously the weather continues to throw us curveballs. It's first day of spring tomorrow, and it's snowing right now. We did dodge some severe weather late last week. The rainfall from the storm event was scattered throughout the area, but here in Barberton, we have several rain gauges. So in one location, the highest was 1.19 inches. And that calculation of rainfall is if it would have rained for an entire hour, it was 2.46 inches per hour. And so in terms of snow, 1 inch of rain, and I realize rain is a liquid, but rain versus snow, 1 inch of water is about 11 inches of snow. So, 11 inches of snow, obviously it's not liquid, it's not going to drain away as quickly, but, the city shuts down. A lot of places shut down with 11 inches of snow or more. So we received quite a bit, but it was scattered throughout the city. So some rain markers got a lot less than the 1.19 inches. But it does show you how fast and how hard the weather was coming down for the rain. Obviously, the wind played a major role in that as well, but at the end of the day, we didn't experience any storm damage throughout the city. So and if you saw what happened up north of us, and the tornado sirens were going off in Wadsworth and other areas, and kind of shifted gears when it came over to our area. So I do want to thank the fire department for providing CPR classes for our employees last week. We're setting up free CPR classes for the residents here like we did last year. Also want to thank our police department for the community policing efforts that they've been doing throughout town. You may have seen, if you've been on the north end of town, the reconstruction project of West State Street and Worcester Road North will commence here on Monday the 25th. Kenmore was on site today, but they're doing some drive approaches outside of the road area. But just want to tell everyone to be mindful of any lane changes and traffic patterns that will be changing as they kind of shut down for the wintertime. They're going to pick it back up. So that's going to be changing as they finish the project here. Then just lastly, tomorrow's the primary vote day. Polls open at 6:30 a.m. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Sorry, I don't have a question. I just wanted to remind everybody, with tomorrow being Election Day, the high school is closed for students because that is now a polling location. So
Oh,
all the other schools have school tomorrow, but high schoolers are off
my son
for
neglected to
Barberton.
tell me.
Good luck.
So that's all.
Thank you, Mrs. Thompson.
Yep.
All right. Well, with nothing else, this meeting is adjourned at 6:53 PM.